Welcome to Wisdom Trek with Gramps. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, and we are on day 2675 of our trek. The purpose of Wisdom Trek is to create a legacy of wisdom, to seek out discernment and insights, and to boldly grow where few have chosen to grow before. Today's Wisdom Nugget is titled Wrestling with Doubt, Anchored in Ancient Wonders, a trek through Psalm 77, verses 1 through 12. Today we begin a deeply personal and emotionally charged trek through Psalm 77 in the New Living Translation, encompassing the foundational verses of 1 through 12. Psalm 77, like many that we've explored recently, is attributed to Asaph, but after a triumphant declaration of God's ultimate judgment in Psalm 75, in the awesome, inspiring celebration of God's protective power in Psalm 76, where Jerusalem was defended and the enemy shattered, Psalm 77 turns a sharp turn. It brings us back to the raw, intimate struggle of an individual soul wrestling with profound spiritual distress. This is not a national lament over a devastated temple, but a personal cry from the depths of a troubled spirit, plagued with sleeplessness and agonizing questions about God's faithfulness. This psalm vividly captures the experiences of spiritual darkness, where the past blessings seem distant, and doubt whispers insidious questions about God's unchanging nature. Yet it also provides a powerful pathway out of the darkness by intentionally remembering and meditating on God's mighty acts and wonders from the ancient times. It is a profound lesson on how to fight for our faith when our feelings betray us. So let us immerse ourselves in the raw, honest, and ultimately redemptive journey of faith. First, let's read Psalm 77, verses 1 through 6. I cry out to God, yes, I shout. Oh, that God would listen to me. When I was in trouble, I sought the Lord. All night long I prayed with hands uplifted, but my soul refused to be comforted. I recall the days of my prosperity, but then I groan. I think of God, and I am troubled. I grow faint as I think about it. You have held my eyelids open. I am too distressed to speak. I keep thinking about the good old days, the long years of the past. I ponder my sad songs in the night. My heart questions in darkness. The psalmist opens with an immediate and intense expression of distress, leaving no doubt about the depths of his anguish. I cry out to God. Yes, I shout. Oh, that God would listen to me. This isn't a polite prayer. It's a desperate, almost violent cry. He is shouting to God, indicating extreme urgency and pain. The plea, oh God, that you would listen to me, literally, my voice to God and he will give ear to me, highlights his desperate longing for divine attention, implying that he feels unheard or ignored. His distress drives him to seek the Lord, even through sleepless nights. When I am in trouble, I sought the Lord. All night long I prayed with hands uplifted, but my soul refused to be comforted. Hands uplifted is a common posture of the prayer in ancient Israel, signifying supplication and surrender. He has poured out his heart to God, persistently through the long hours of darkness. Yet despite his fervent prayer, his soul refused to be comforted. This is a heartbreaking reality, a spiritual exhaustion so deep that even God's potential comfort cannot penetrate. He's doing all things right, but his inner turmoil still persists. The memory of past blessings only deepens his present sorrow. I recall the days of my prosperity, but then I groan. I think of God, and I am troubled. I grow faint as I think about it. When he recalls the days of my prosperity, the times when life was good and God's favor was evident, it doesn't bring solace, it brings a groan, a deep involuntary sound of pain and despair over the stark contrast with the current suffering. Even thinking about God himself, rather than bringing peace, leaves him troubled and causes him to grow faint. This is the core of his spiritual crisis. The very thought of God, who should bring comfort, now only intensifies his distress. This indicates a profound crisis of understanding God's character in relationship to his current suffering. The interlude gives us a moment to absorb the raw agony of the soul. His torment manifests his persistent insomnia and his inability to speak. You have held my eyelids open. I am too distressed to speak. God, in his sovereignty, has allowed the psalmist to remain awake, unable to sleep, tormented by his thoughts. And his distress is so overwhelming that he is too distressed to speak, indicating a state of profound emotional paralysis where words fail to capture the depths of his internal anguish. This silence is not peaceful. It is a silence of utter emotional collapse. In this sleepless, silent torment, his mind fixes on the past. I keep thinking about the good old days. I long for the years of the past. I ponder my sad songs in the night. My heart questions in the darkness. He obsesses over the former days, the good old days, and long years of the past, when God's favor was evident. He ponders his sad song, or meditates on my song in the night, perhaps a song of lament or a reflection of his own suffering. In the depths of the night, his heart is relentlessly interrogating his faith, asking difficult, agonizing questions about God's character and his presence. This initial section paints a vivid picture of extreme mental and spiritual anguish, a soul teetering on the edge of despair, unable to find comfort or peace, haunted by memories and tormented by questions. It's a stark contrast to the triumphant confidence in Psalm 76. Now let's move on to verses 7 through 12, where the psalmist articulates his specific agonizing questions that are tormenting his soul, and then he begins to find out the way out of his despair by intentionally remembering God's ancient acts. Has the Lord abandoned us forever? Will he never again be kind to us? Has his unfailing love vanquished forever? Have his promises failed for all time? Has God forgotten to be merciful? Has he in his anger withheld his compassion? Selah. But then I recall all that you have done, O Lord. I remember your wonderful deeds from long ago. They are constantly in my thoughts. I cannot stop thinking about your mighty works. These are agonizing questions that tormented the psalmist's heart in the darkness, at the very core of his spiritual crisis. Has the Lord abandoned us forever? Will he never be kind to us again? Will he never again be kind to us? Has his unfailing love vanished forever? Have his promises failed for all time? Has God forgotten the merciful? Has he in his anger withheld his compassion? These questions directly challenge the fundamental aspects of God's character and his covenant faithfulness, which are the cornerstones of ancient Israelite theology. Let's look at each of them individually. Has the Lord abandoned us forever? This reflects a fear of permanent rejection, a concern that God's presence, so evident in Psalm 76, is now withdrawn for good. Will he never again be kind to us? This questions God's benevolence, his willingness to show favor. Has his unfailing love vanished forever? Unfailing love, the Hebrew word hesed, is God's steadfast, loyal, covenant-keeping love, central to his identity. To question its permanence is to question God himself. Have his promises failed for all time? This challenges God's trustworthiness and his fidelity to his covenant word. Has God forgotten to be merciful? Has he in his anger withheld his compassion? This questions God's core attribute of mercy and compassion, suggesting that anger has consumed his benevolent nature. These are not trivial questions. They strike at the very heart of who God is and whether he can be trusted. For the Israelite, losing faith in these attributes of God meant losing hope entirely. The Selah here marks a pause after these incredible, painful, probing questions, allowing the weight of them to sink in. Then a crucial turning point occurs, signaled by the powerful conjunction, but then. But then I recall all you have done, O Lord. I remember your wonderful deeds of long ago. Instead of continuing the spiral of distress and questioning, the psalmist intentionally shifts his focus. He forces himself to recall and remember God's past actions. This doesn't invent new truths. He goes back to a well-established historical divine interventions. Wonderful deeds, the Hebrew word peleh, refers to God's miraculous, astonishing acts that defy human explanation, like the Exodus or the defeat of his powerful enemies. This act of remembrance is a spiritual discipline, a fight for faith. This act of remembrance becomes all-consuming. They are constantly in my thoughts. I cannot stop thinking about your mighty works. What began as a deliberate act of memory quickly transforms into an overwhelming preoccupation. His mind, previously tormented by doubt and despair, is now filled with the greatness of God's past works. This is the path of resolution. By focusing on what God has done and who he has proven himself to be, the psalmist begins to pull himself out of the deep mire of his anguish. This is a profound example of us. When our feelings lie to us about God's faithfulness, we must intentionally remind ourselves of God's unchanging truth revealed in his past actions. This intentional meditation on God's works lays the groundwork for the resolution of his crisis in the verses to follow, moving him from paralyzing doubt to renewed confidence and awe. So what profound wisdom can we draw from these opening verses of Psalm 77 for our wisdom trek today? Well, firstly, this psalm validates the experiences of deep spiritual distress, the sleepless nights, the agonizing questions about God's apparent silence or absence. It shows that it is permissible to bring the rawest emotions and most difficult doubts directly to God. Asaph did not pretend, nor should we. Secondly, it highlights the danger of allowing our feelings and present circumstances to distort our understanding of God's character. When our souls refuse to be comforted, or when our thoughts of God bring trouble, it is a sign that our perspective has become clouded. Thirdly, the turning point in Asaph's struggle provides a powerful spiritual discipline, the intentional act of remembering and meditating on God's past faithfulness. When doubts whisper, we must shout back with undeniable truths about God's historical acts of salvation and His unchanging attributes. And finally, it reminds us that even when God seems silent, or our minds are plagued with questions about His love, promises, mercy, and compassion, we can fight for our faith by intentionally filling our thoughts with all that You have done, O Lord, and His mighty works. This intentional memory work becomes an anchor in our storm, guiding us back to trust and awe. Let us learn from Asaph's journey, and when our hearts are troubled and filled with doubt, let us resolve to remember, recall, and meditate on the wonderful deeds of our God. Thank you for joining me on this powerful and deeply personal trek through the opening verses of Psalm 77. I trust that this exploration of wrestling with doubt and finding solace in God's ancient wonders has resonated with your own journey. Join me again the next time when we continue to seek and apply the timeless truths of God's Word. And if you found this podcast insightful, please subscribe and leave us a review. Then encourage your friends and family to join us and come along with us tomorrow for another day of Wisdom Trek, creating a legacy. Thank you so much for allowing me to be your guide, your mentor, and most importantly, I am your friend as I serve you through the Wisdom Trek podcast and journal. As we take this trek of life together, let us always live abundantly, love unconditionally, listen intentionally, learn continuously, lend to others generously, lead with integrity, and leave a living legacy each day. I am Guthrie Chamberlain, reminding you to keep moving forward, enjoy your journey, and create a great day every day. See you next time for more daily wisdom.